or Apple Podcast. And as always, you could head on over to the website, americaoutloud.com, and check out the articles and podcasts. And please share those on social media. We have a big show tonight with journalist Heather Robinson and Bebe Diamond joining us for some discussion on current events. And I think everyone has heard by now about Hunter Biden, who was recently busted in text messages and just unveiled by the Daily Mail over using the N-word. We already knew this guy had a sex addiction and a drug addiction, which you cannot completely blame Joe Biden for, but this recent racist language and him abandoning his baby he had with the stripper just shows bad character. This kind of language was never permitted at my home. It sounds like he learned this language was okay growing up in his family or household. I'm white, so obviously I grew up in a white household, and this language would have never been permitted. When is the media going to finally stop calling Hunter Biden a kid and stop making excuses for him and hold him accountable? He's almost 50 years old. What do you think, Rob?
Well, first of all, I'm glad that we have on tonight with us Heather Robinson and Bebe Diamond. We enjoy when they come on and help us, dissect current events, hot topics. Always want to hear a different side. We might not always agree, but it's good to have someone else to come on and share with us their thoughts. Now, going back to Hunter Biden and the recent revelation that he has used the N-word. Now, when this first broke, everyone wasn't sure if it was in fact Hunter Biden or if this was made up. Now, of course, being who we are, we always want to give a person the benefit of the doubt. But it turns out that it was Hunter Biden. But what's fascinating is how the media has just chose to completely overlook this, not say anything about it. Business as usual. As always, they always look the other way whenever there's any controversy involving the Bidens. So, Andrew, you said something that I thought was interesting. Like you said, you grew up in a white household. That language was never allowed in your household. Well, today's households are different. And while I would like to think that that word isn't being used, you listen to rap music and you hear the N-word all the time. You listen to Eminem. He's probably cleaned it up now. But you go back and listen to some of the old rap music of, what's the guy's name? Jay-Z. Tupac, 50 Cent, and then some of the other guys whose names I don't even know, I can't even pronounce. And they're using that word, and they'll say, oh, we're using it in a very endearing type way. I live in New York City, and I walk the streets. Well, not walk the streets like a street walker, but that's what you do in the city, you walk. And I hear kids using the N-word. I hear black kids, Mexican kids, white kids. So maybe it could be that Hunter Biden was trying to be cool. He was trying to be down. And he felt, hey, if they can say it, why can't I say the N-word? But as you said, the media has said absolutely nothing. Nothing to see here. Move on. Now, can you imagine had an email or text surfaced and Donald Trump Jr. or Ivanka or Eric Trump had used the N-word? Where's Omarosa? I mean, certainly she can find some text with them using the N-word. Not that we want her to come out now, so wherever she's hidden, stay there. But it's just fascinating that we have this on record. This guy said it. If you want to say racist, I'm not going to say he's a racist, but I mean, if you want to make the argument, you can. But they will say, oh, Donald Trump, he's a racist. And now we have this whole thing with racism and the left and the right, they're racist. Wake the heck up, please. There's more at play here than what you guys think is at play. And you guys being black people, brown people, or those diehard white liberals. Wake up, you're being used as pawns. Wake up before it's too late. There's something sinister that's at play here. And little by little, taking away what Americans. Wake up. Heather, Bebe, what do you guys say?
Thank you for having me on. It's good to see you, Heather. I'm looking at these emails between Hunter or these text messages. I don't really think personally it was meant from a racist, like I hate black people, that kind of use of the N word. But it's the idea that the media is giving him a pass because you summed it up so well, Rob. Had this been one of the Trumps, had this been a Republican, this would be all over the news. This would be on the news, just crazily covered. See, this proves that Republicans are racist. We knew Trump was racist all the time. So the fact that the media is not really reporting on this is striking. The media in this country, and I think it's fair to say, they have failed the American people. And I'll just stop there for now. But again, if it happened any Republican, this would be plastered all over the place, and we know it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And before Heather speaks, I just would like to say that as white people, we've always been taught we do not use that word. Obviously, Hunter Biden, I don't think, was using it in a derogatory way and towards his friend. But speaking for myself personally, I would never use that word, particularly to a black individual, like Hunter was. Go ahead, Heather.
But if I could just, before Heather steps in, and his attorney was white. So I agree with both you and Bebe, Andrew. I don't think he was using it in a derogatory fashion, but the idea that he used it. Now, me personally, when I hear it's being used, because it's in rap music, I'm like, if you're going to put it in a rap song, of course, white people, black people, brown people, purple people, yellow people, they're going to use it. What do you expect? It's part of the culture. But the sheer fact that had Trump's children said it, or even had they sung a song with it, or had it playing in the background, the media would have started running around with their hair on fire. Go ahead, Heather.
Yes, I would agree with everything that you guys have said. I think the word itself is derogatory. So really, there's no use of it that I am comfortable with. And I think it's very open-minded of you, though, Rob, which doesn't surprise me, to consider what his intent may have been, that it may not have been said with vicious intent or written. And I think that's a lot more open-mindedness, I agree, and grace than liberals or leftists would ever give any conservative who used that word.
So it just begs the question, is the media covering for the Bidens? And the answer is yes. I mean, you look at all of the malfeasance that this family has committed, all the, I want to say crimes, but, collusion with China, Biden's laptop, and that laptop seems to be a treasure trove of misdeeds. And had it been any of Trump's children, the content of that laptop would be all over social media. Twitter would allow it. Twitter would have it trending. But try to trend Hunter and what he said, or make any comments. I can't do it now because they kicked me off so many times I can't count. And that's another thing. Let's just segue to that. Social media. Facebook. Well, we're going to ban Trump for life. Well, we're going to ban him for 2 years, and then we'll reconsider within 2 years' time. Are you serious? This is a president. This was a former president of the United States of America. And you want to ban him, and you allow all these terrorist groups on your platform? Look at Twitter. Twitter got kicked out of Nigeria because they censored the president. And now Twitter, of all people, they're crying. Oh, how can you do this to us? I don't blame the guy. Trump should have done the same thing. He should have banned them from the US. We all know that they're an arm of the Democrat Party, which seems to be another arm of China. Yes, I said it. All these social media platforms, be careful. I don't use TikTok, never will. I don't see the need to use it. And now Joe Biden is coming along. He's going to say, okay, whatever Trump had done with TikTok, he's going to remove it. This is not good at all. How can we allow these companies to censor people, to stifle people's livelihoods simply because they don't like what you're saying? Your ideology does not agree with theirs. So their feelings are hurt. So they have decided, well, we're going to kick you off. And to have people defending them and saying, well, it's a private company. Okay, fine, I got it. It's a private company. But a private company that's operating as a public utility company and is receiving all the benefits of a utility company. People should be allowed to sue them. I commend what Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, is doing, allowing people to sue up to, I think, $100,000. And look who's the first person who's going to take advantage of that? This one lady who came out with all this misinformation about COVID-19. She's looking at suing Twitter, and rightfully so. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me at all. What do you guys think?
Well, no, you're absolutely right. The censorship by big tech, by Twitter, by Facebook, it's outrageous. They're using their power. They're using Section 230 to silence conservatives. That's what it's all about. It even goes to this whole COVID-19, censoring doctors who don't agree with Dr. Fauci and the NIH. I mean, something has to be done about big tech. Something has to be done about the media, because they just want the narrative to go in one direction. It has to benefit the Democrats or the left, or they're not going to report it. Again, what you said, Rob, is important, because the rappers Jay-Z, Biggie Smalls, 50 Cent, they all use the N-word. They all, but they, in there, as you said, they say they use it to, as not as necessarily a negative way, but they use it. So, but the fact that Hunter Biden felt comfortable using it, I mean, based on the text I saw in the New York Post, I mean, it wasn't anything derogatory toward blacks, but the fact that he felt comfortable using it tells me something is off here, but the media is avoiding it. So we got some big issues with the media, the corporate media in the United States, and social media, big tech, when it comes to this issue, COVID-19, the election. I mean, I just don't know how we get around it. I really don't. But we have to chip away at this mountain. Thank you.
We have to chip away. We have to take a huge axe, and start just like knocking down or cutting down some of those big chunks, because where we're headed now isn't good at all. It's just not good. You look at how if you say something that they don't like, look at what happened with Israel and how they allow people to go on and make all of the derogatory comments. And it's okay. But if you go on and challenge them, they will kick you off. Heather, what are your thoughts? Because you've written about the conflict between the Israelis and the Palestinians.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And just the idea that we have Americans that are turning their back on one of our strongest allies. It's just unbelievable. And the things that they're saying, Ilhan Omar, Rashid Tlaib, and the social media, they're like, okay, fine. They're entitled to say what they want to say. But if I were on Twitter, and if I were to come out and push back, suspension, we don't want to hear it. I can't believe this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, in general, you have the left able to pretty much say whatever they want and write whatever they want. And I mean, to me, it's just, I haven't been able to get over it in quite a while. I mean, the double standard is so glaring. Yes, we had, as we know, we had violence in the streets of many cities of this country, all, for months last spring and summer, and we had organized groups. I'm talking about BLM and Antifa. If I'm not mistaken, I mean, they were calling for, fight for justice and, burn it down on social media. And I'm not aware of any of them being suspended or kicked off. Quite the contrary, we heard that this was all part of the great American tradition of protest, of peaceful protest, even when it, in many cases, in many different locations, many times, again and again, it was not peaceful. I mean, there were many people who were peaceful, but we all saw with our eyes it descend the so-called peaceful protests descend into violence, not just once or twice, but numerous times in numerous places for not just days, but weeks and months, while these organized groups continued to use language that, was riling people up, and we saw that from leftist politicians as well. And none of them were sanctioned on social media. So I just simply don't understand how anybody can not see the very glaring double standard. We're told that anything that in any way, shape, or form could be interpreted, even figurative language, as a egging on of violence, from anyone, on the conservative side of the aisle, even when there is no incitement, that would meet any kind of legal standard. We know that you guys yourselves have been the victims of this censorship, and it simply does not apply to the other side. And as far as Israel, that's unfortunately a perennial story. These people who claim such humanitarian concern, and I do believe there are people who sincerely feel very bad about the loss of civilian life. I'm one of those people. But I don't see how anyone who really cares about that won't call out Hamas, who initiates violence and purposely hides among civilians. These are grown men, so-called fighters, who refuse to come out and fight in areas where they're not surrounded by children. I don't know how anybody who really, if it's really about the children, and it's not just about hating Israel, I don't see how anyone who's really concerned with addressing the ongoing conflict and trying to help protect children wouldn't, at the very least, while they're criticizing Israel, say, Hamas, stop it. Just stop it. So that's how, and I know they're fakes as far as they're concerned for the children. And that really upsets me, not just as a Zionist, but as a humanitarian, because I think maybe if more people on both sides really were concerned for children, that might be a way out of this terrible, terrible ongoing problem and conflict. But I think, we see a lot of lip service and a lot of people, picking their side. And in the case of the left, there's this endless kind of covering for, anyone on the Arab side, and, endless justification of their use of children as human shields. And, it belies the claim that they're really concerned about civilian life. And it empowers the terrorists. It empowers Hamas to continue doing what it does. And that's, part of the reason I think the cycle continues.
Yeah, it seems like it's free game on a lot of these social media companies to bash Israel and Jews, but if you dare bash the actual Islamofascists that are terrorists, you will get canceled and banned. It makes no sense. I think a lot of the problem is the people that work for these tech companies are from San Francisco and are like AOC style progressives, and it's human nature to be biased. So when you see something that goes against your ideology, it's only logical to get defensive. But these are the people that are banning us from social media. It's quite sad that they've got such biased people working for their companies, and I don't think anything's going to be solved until they can root out that problem.
Very one-sided and very ill-informed. I agree, Andrew. And yeah, I think there's plenty of anti-Semitism and anti-Israelism. Some of these people may believe they're doing the right thing, and they just haven't really studied the issues in any kind of balanced way, and they don't realize that they're providing incentive. They're incentivizing terrorists to keep doing this, to keep picking fights with Israel, using the kids, racking up the death toll, because then the international community condemns Israel, and the terrorists, presumably they certainly get plenty of attention and sympathy, if not concessions. So, where on earth would they get the idea that this strategy pays? Well, it's been paying, in a sense, for them for 70 plus years, because these corrupt people stay in power in the Palestinian territories. Nothing changes for the people. Every few years they pick fights, And Israel's forced into this impossible position. Either let yourself and your civilians be attacked and, killed and be wounded, or, and sit there because the enemy has a shameless set of tactics. So you can either just be a pacifist and not fight back for fear of hurting their civilians and watch your civilians die, or you can try to, protect your country and then in the process fall into the trap of as you're getting the terrorists, you get some civilians, and then that's a victory for the other side too, and it's a very sad thing. It makes me very sad. I'll tell you guys. I don't really know what Israel should do. But I know that people should wise up to what the terrorists are doing, and that this is all part of the strategy.
Right. Now, Bebe, you and Barbara from Harlem speak a lot about the Israeli-American relationship on our Urban Story on Saturday. What is your take on this?
Well, you're absolutely right, and I agree with Heather. It is sad, and it's unfortunate that the innocent Palestinian Arabs are caught up in this. But to me, this is not about land. In Hamas's own charter, they call for the destruction of Israel. This is about the war against Jews. This is not just about land. I want us to be very, very clear. Mm-hmm. And the media in this country and in Europe are very biased against Israel. And obviously the United Nations is, I think I say obvious because they've been doing this kind of demonizing Israel for decades. Mm-hmm. But this is not about going to the 1967 lines and all this other stuff. Mm-hmm. This is about anti-Semitism. Period, as far as I'm concerned. So this whole thing about Temple Mount and all that's all that's all a smoke screen. Mm-hmm. It's really about hating Jews at the end of the day, in my opinion. And Israel must fight back. No other country would allow their citizens to be under attack without fighting back. Israel must stand up and fight back. Thank you.
No, you're right. They must fight back. And for Americans to say that they shouldn't, that Joe Biden to even call Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister, and say, you need to stop this and not call Hamas. You would wonder, what the heck are you thinking, or why aren't you thinking? This would have never happened under President Trump. I don't think it would have happened under any president, maybe Barack Obama, because we know that Barack Obama did not like the prime minister. But this is what happened when you allow these knuckleheads to gain power. I mean, it's just like a post-mortem. I wonder if any of these people are looking back and saying, wow, look at the mess that we've created the past just 100 days since Joe Biden took office. He tried to come in and do like President Trump and change things up, but he made things worse. Look at the border. The border is a catastrophe. It is a colossal mess. People flooding the borders. And have you guys noticed that in the wee hours of the night, they're taking these individuals and they're busing them to red states or flying them to red states? Why do you think they're doing that? They're trying to change the demographics for rezoning, gerrymandering, so that they can say, nope, we need more blue senators here. We need more of this. They want to carve up these cities and states so that Democrats will have the upper hand. Do not doubt me on this. Look around you. Yes, they're sending some of them to blue states, but red states. And my advice to the governors and mayors of those red states is to push back and to reject. Push back and reject. Don't allow them to encroach upon your borders. Don't allow them to do this. You have the right to protect your citizens. And as Christine Noem, the governor, said, we don't want them here. If you want to come here legally. Why would they bus them to red states? They want to change the demographic of those states. Watch and look and see what's happening. That Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, they are two deceitful individuals, along with the Democrats. This was all part of their master plan. Now, I know that we'll survive, hopefully, the 4 years that he's in office. But the damage that will be done, and I would say to Republicans, wake the heck up. You have got to start fighting. You have got to start pushing back. They've turned their backs on our allies, Israel. They've turned their backs on Americans. You had a journalist the other day come out and say, what was her name? Mara Gay, New York Times, that she was in New York City on Long Island. It's like a suburb of New York City. And that she felt like she was like threatened because she saw American flags being flown. American flags. The country that has given her so much. We're not perfect. But to say that, you guys realize that I think this is the only country whereby people hate the flag. Every other country can fly their flag. And now you have these knuckleheads flying BLM flags. The pride flag. If it wasn't for the American flag, those two flags would not exist. More kids can identify the rainbow flag than Old Glory. That's shameful. We don't know our own history. And then they want to bring up this whole CRT, critical race theory. That's another topic, Bebe, I've heard you talk about on your show. It's critical race theory? Exactly. No, that's a racist. It's racism. Racism one-on-one. Someone say, well, it's reverse racism. No, it's just racism. Bebe, you're about to say.
No, you're absolutely right. And as my mother, Barbara from Harlem, said, it's crazy radical trash. Critical race theory demonizes white people and teaching white children that you were born racist. No child should be told that at all. This is horrible. I'm glad that there are parents. I think there's a mother in Carmel, New York. It went viral. She told the school board, her child, I'm just paraphrasing, they're not fighting against this critical race theory. She's not going to stand by. I mean, they're demonizing innocent white children, and this is not acceptable. This is born out of Marxism and a sense of Black supremacy, and that is anti-American. That is not what we stand for. Black supremacy, as Dr. King said, is just as bad as white supremacy. It is not acceptable. Thank you.
Not acceptable at all, because it should be the content of character, not the color of skin. How did we get to this point? How do we just lose all those values? How do we lose all those thoughts? And we just decide, oh no, this is it. And when I see white liberals that are up trying to justify this, I mean, Loudoun County in Virginia, one of the richest counties, and they're trying to push this. I saw that clip, Bebe, with this mother of, I would say, a mama bear. And she's saying, no, 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 we don't want this. How did they manage to get it in? Like, when did we fall asleep? And you have this in our schools teaching kids that they're bad. A decade from now, those same kids will be in therapy. 2 decades from now, those same kids will be suing the government saying, hey, you owe us reparations. Because we were taught by the government to hate ourselves. We were told that we were no good, and we believed it. And I have a psychological problem because of it. How did it get to this? Heather, you say.
Just loved your words, Bebe, as this idea that innocence, that children are being robbed of their innocence. I think to tell any child, that he is or she is born bad somehow to me, it's so obviously wrong. I agree with you. And the liberals are supposed to be, in a lot of ways, the people who are psychologically minded, feelings minded, therapy minded. I mean, I can't understand how, I mean, the basic principles you hear in a therapy session or a yoga class, or, things that you normally think of liberals as being very interested in. The idea that we need to have self-esteem, we need to encourage children not to be uh, think they're, everything they do is automatically right and great, or that they can't make mistakes. But the idea of telling a child that there's something inherently wrong just by virtue of something as literally superficial as the skin on their body, whatever color it is. I mean, it's so anti-humanistic, so cruel, really, so racist. I mean, these people are racists. I was thinking the other day about it. It's like skin is skin deep, basically. And, this is their obsession. To me, it's a little like being obsessed with hair color or eye color. To build your life around this is very sad and very silly. I think that, unfortunately, I guess because of the terrible sins and mistakes of the past and the racism, the slavery, the abuse of Black and brown people, the horrors that happened, this is a reaction to that. It's a misguided reaction to some horrible times and crimes that extended for generations and maybe were never properly grieved and confronted and dealt with. And now it's deep in the culture. The obsession continues. And I think that it's against Reverend King's vision, against the vision of every really great humanitarian who has tried to uplift the human race. And I think that there are these deep currents in the culture that seem to just reverberate, and somehow it's part of that. And how we get to a healthier place, well, I think it's great that we have these kinds of discussions and friendships. I'm a great believer in personal connection and relationship, and being in relationship and with each other. So I'm a great fan of yours and of Rob's, and you too, Andrew. I think we're doing a little bit here tonight, and I think that we need to just inculcate our children with human values and remind them that we are one race, we are the human race, and we are all individuals. And beyond that, I think we have to just keep stating those simple but profound truths in the face of a lot of disturbed thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so important people tune in to station out loud so they can get the real news that you will not see on mainstream media. You're tuned into After Dark with Rob and Andrew, available on America Out Loud via iHeartRadio, Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, or download the America Out Loud app to keep track of all the great shows. We will be back with more from our guests, Bebe Diamond and Heather Robinson.